welcome back from the short break. Of course, you are still watching ACFIM Talks, and we're discussing the politics of GMOs. And before we took a break, as Susan was making the point where I cut her short. Susan, if you can get back, I will allow you to finish your point, so that I can now be able to fire my other question to you again, and then also open it up for anybody who wants to raise a comment, a query, a question. Will be able to respond to it. Just type it. We are live on YouTube. You can put it on our YouTube account. You can also send it on our WhatsApp. Live on WhatsApp at film. Sorry, not WhatsApp, on Facebook. We're also live on our Twitter. So you can be any of those platforms. We should be able to pick your question and be able to answer it or comment. Susan, back to you. You were sharing.
I wanted to give an example of the super banana, which is sort of like, and you spoke about education, and our research agenda is not owned by us Ugandans and just on the African continent. Somebody else owns our research agenda. In this case, we have to be very careful about the lovely Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, which has come out and said they really care about us. They are developing vaccines, they are developing fertilizers. Basically, they have a hand in all that is industrial or commercial agriculture. And they funded a group of young Ugandans to go to do research around the super banana. So basically, the argument was that you Ugandans have a deficiency of vitamin A. And therefore, we will do what we did with the Asians, which is start get food to have the vitamin A component. So they've done it with the golden rice in Kenya, in Asia, which is called golden rice because it's the most popular food. So they came to Uganda and they thought, so which food is the most popular? No, matoke. They picked up a few people, paid the doctorates for them, took them to Australia, 3 years, doctorates on how to tinker with the matoke so that they can match tembe, in fact, so they can add a component of vitamin A. And that research was done in Australia. The testing was done in the USA. After it was done in the USA, then they brought it back to Uganda. So you see, all of these things are not done here. They are done outside of Uganda. And then they brought this back to Uganda. And then they tried to pass the National Biosafety and Biotechnology Bill because that would help to commercialize. So the intention was to commercialize in 2020. And that hence the push for this GMO regulation to happen, the National Biosafety and Biotechnology Bill, the National Biosafety Act, all of those ones. The push and the speed at which they were trying to pass them is because they were trying to commercialize all the GMOs that were being tested in Naro, bananas, cassava, and all of that. Now it's very funny because the vitamin A that they are trying to infuse into this banana is, first of all, into a popular brand of matoke, or a popular variety of matoke that we all know. We always argue, the texture is very good when you cook food with it, and it is also very soft and all of these things. So they pick the particular popular brand that you use, and then they start playing around with it. What are they adding? Vitamin A. The vitamin A that they're adding, you can find in carrots. When they tested the vitamin A that they had added to golden rice in Asia, they said that you would need to eat about 7 kilos of rice in one sitting to be able to get the required vitamin A content in your food. So how much matoke, if, for instance, they passed super banana and it became commercial, how much super banana would you need to eat? How many kilos to be able to get the required nutrients that you need? Which you could actually just give a child a carrot and say, there you go, eat this full carrot every day for the next 5 weeks, and we'll have dealt with some of your nutritional problems over time. So basically, that's the example that I wanted to give, that it has implications to your food systems, it has implications to nutrition, it has implications to the market, and basically, that's one of those things. So that's the example I wanted to give.
And your example partially touches into the question I wanted to ask you, because there's this whole ecosystem around when you talk about food. It's not just food. You're talking about nutrition. You're talking about issues to do with health. And the bigger question is that is there a correlation now? Because when now, especially now, when you look at the new health variants, there were days, there was a period back in the days when Africans never used to suffer from certain diseases. We now see them emerge, and you hear about all these so-called bacterial infections, viral infections. Some have actually this to the weather. Some make a joke that these are lifestyle diseases. But can we connect the dots between how we've distorted the originality of our food to the extent of affecting our immune system and our health because we are trying to live a certain imported lifestyle? Susan, I'm throwing that question to you, but I'll also throw in Henry on that one. I lost Susan. Henry attempt that question.
We lost Susan.
Yeah.
Of course, there has been quite a number of schemes and very convincing statements that many of the political leaders and technocrats have seemed to fallen victim of foreign prey too. For example, when someone says I get your Nakitembe, I improve it. But in essence, when you look at what is happening, is that they're doing everything possible to make sure that this whole notion of indigenous seeds is done away with, either by introducing those seeds that don't want to regerminate or by introducing chemicals. I was reading a story, I think it was yesterday or just the other day, about the toxins in the vegetables we are eating. The tomatoes, the green pepper, the carrots.
But also our maize, which was just in Kenya here because it had a high level of aflatoxins.
Absolutely. And therefore, these have the potential of causing cancer. And we're being warned. But who is manufacturing these chemicals, the herbicides? It is the same companies that are trading in seeds here. Why are they doing this? It's because they want to make sure that if possible, the population can first of all, the population growth in Africa is also worrying the international community. We are growing at a speed that is so astronomical that is concerning the West. Of course, now that can happen because when you suffer from diseases, the destination is 6 feet under, and therefore we have to be very careful about this. Now, she spoke about issues to do with the bills that are so hurried and the legislation systems that are done in such a hurried manner in order to help those companies commercialize the seed. They commercialize all the other breeds, whether they're breeds of animals. Today, I'll tell you an example. You can look for the Mubende goat. You cannot find it. Where did the Mubende goat go? Those who are in the business of enjoying pork, the traditional pig is no longer there. Because for me, when I was growing up, if someone was roasting pork, you would feel the aroma from many kilometers away. Today, you reach a butcher where they're roasting it from, even where they're roasting it from, and you cannot feel anything. So the breeds that we knew have been taken. We don't want them to take away the Ankole cattle, for example. We want our Ankole cattle. But you see, the more we embrace these breeds, our Ankole cattle is likely going to go. And I think kudos to Mr. Museveni for refusing to sign these bills. The bigger question, though, is what is the motivation of these MPs? What is pushing them? Why are they acting in a weird manner? As if they've been bribed and bribed massively, that they must be seen to please the provider of the money by doing the things that don't necessarily satisfy the interests of Uganda, but the interests of foreign companies. These are some of the things that we keep questioning about.
Okay, Susan, I lost you a bit there, but
apologies, my network is not behaving today.
It's fine. It's okay. It's understandable. That reminds me that You are in Africa. Now I'm sure you're in Africa. Okay. When it comes to and Henry has hinted on it because I think you also read that story of the tomatoes that were feared to be I think the story that ran either Vision or Morning. I think it was a New Vision that talked about the tomatoes that seem to be um, they are not infected, but they are affected by the herbicides that have been used on them.
The chemicals.
But the chemicals that have been used on the tomatoes seem, and there was a great concern in that story. And the bigger question is, do we have a body that monitors and controls the quality of herbicides, the quality of seeds being given to farmers, the inputs to safeguard consumers and users?
Before I was bumped off, there was a question that you asked around if these are correlated with the current health system that we see. And I'll try and go back to that before I jump onto the next question. One of the things that we have to be aware now is even the rest of the world is wondering, because 8 out of the 20 non-communicable disease burden that we see in the world is currently on the African continent. And everybody's wondering how the African continent got there.
Did you say 8 out of?
8 out of the 20 countries that have the highest NCD or non-communicable disease burden are on the African continent. This is South Africa, I think it was Benin, there's Ethiopia, a few other countries that I've forgotten, but 8 of those countries are on the African continent. And everybody's wondering because we have the best diets. We are supposed to have the best diets in the world. At the moment, those diets have been compromised by the chemicals that are appearing in our foods, which we are not testing, by the way. One of the tests that we did a few years ago in Kenya, where we found out that a lot of the sukuma wiki on the market had chemicals in it. And this was going on the market very freely. We see this in the tomatoes that we have. And we actually go in the market as consumers and buy it. So I think we need to get to a point where even us, the consumers, have a responsibility to ourselves and to the people around us. You go to the market, you find tomatoes, they have that white substance on them. Just know that's a chemical. Don't buy it. Or at least make noise. We're not doing that. We're all quiet. And I think we need to stop putting the entire responsibility of what we consume on
we are interested in the bigger the tomato, the better.
Yes, but the thing is, like I would like to I keep telling people there was a variety of tomatoes, those big ones, the local ones, very big, very juicy for women. When you go into the kitchen and you use those ones, you just need one tomato and you're sorted. Then we got these ones, these small ones, the sharp ones. I don't know, they call them, I don't know their name, but I hear people calling them musonono. Put them in the market and everybody runs around and buys those markets, and we don't question where the local variety of the tomatoes went, the variety that we knew. And then we pack up the, what are they called? Enina, the very small tomatoes that used to grow in our gardens. Yes, we as children would run, pick up one, dump it in the mouth, eat, and off we go. Very healthy. All the nutrients are there. Then we pack them off and send them to the rest of the world, and the rest of the world uses them in their meals, and they look very pretty in the hotels. And we still don't think about the fact that we are exporting the food that is supposed to support us. But back to the chemicals, the question around the entry of chemicals into the world. 34 countries in Europe have banned, I think at the moment it's 34, they have banned the use of glyphosate. Now, glyphosate, the active ingredient is what we call Roundup in our countries. 34 countries in the world have said we cannot continue using glyphosate in our food because it has components that cause cancer. The president of ChemChina came on when ChemChina became ChemChina about 5 years ago, said that one of their most important and aggressive marketing tools will be trying to break into the African market, because in those days, Africa was a very difficult continent to send chemicals to. So ChemChina has deliberately said that they will market chemicals to the African continent, and all their strategies are on that. Now, if you think about it, in the last 3 years, see how much Rocket, Roundup, and all those chemicals is on the market, available, cheap. Never used to be that way. It's very interesting because I go to my grandmother's house and they have a tin where they keep salt. And that tin where they keep salt, I asked my grandmother when they got that tin, and she said, I think it was around the 1970s. Your grandfather brought something to. It was very rare. That tin is strong, it's heavy, but it had chemical. And you can see that it was a very rare thing because it exists today. It has a very nice mark on it, Roundup, but she says they acquired it in the 1970s. It was very difficult to come by. These days, you just walk around the corner and you'll find Roundup or Rocket in everything. Container village, the seeds that you see. Why are we talking about things that are supposed to be ours in container village? Why are we going to buy seed in container village? Why is agribusiness becoming so big and aggressive? And one thing we have to know is that once agribusiness becomes viral, it means that the use of seeds, because in monocropping and industrial agriculture, the push for seeds to be sold comes with the acquiring of chemical inputs to use in the garden. It also means that you stop planting varieties and you stop the farming systems that we knew. So the mixed cropping, one corner of the garden, you have your coffee, another corner you have your beans, another corner you have your groundnuts. That stops because you need to be able to use tractors. You need to be able to apply chemicals at a large scale. So that has its own problem. So every time you see the commercialization of seeds, it means that indigenous varieties fall away. It means that the food systems become very different. It means we start planting for commercial purposes. So we start even saying, we don't even need to plant food. What we do is that let us go and plant about 5 acres of sugar canes, and then we'll go and buy food at the neighbors. Because you see, what you do with your planting system is that it changes. Once you start planting sugarcane, you start planting pine, you start planting all the commercial crops that you see today, your farming system changes. You cannot cut the garden into small pieces to be able to accommodate every single food that you want to eat. You have to do it on a large scale so that you can be able to make money out of it. If you imagine if you planted 5 pine trees, would you make money out of them? No. So you need to plant a bigger chunk to be able to get money out of it. So you get rid of the food systems. This is what we are seeing in Busoga. We are seeing it in the growth corridor of Tanzania as well, the Southern African growth corridor of Tanzania as well. That's what we are seeing. We are seeing it in the places where Mubende, the Mubende goat. Now we see even Mubende. The landmark of entering Mubende before used to be those forests and very beautiful trees and all of those things. Now we have eucalyptus and pine, all the way from, I think, that small village before you get into Mubende, Katabalanga, before Katabalanga, and right through to Mubende. All of that is pine, even on the forest. I mean, on the hills. All of that is pine and eucalyptus. So the farming system changes. You have to apply chemicals to be able to survive. And I think one of the things is that you don't plant anything underneath the tree because they have to be. Yes. And then if you go to Kalangala where we are planting oil palm, I don't know, I don't even know how to say this. Every Ghanaian is saying, hey, fish is very expensive these days. Please go to Kalangala and see why fish is very expensive. The original farmers, I mean the original fisher folk of Kalangala cannot access the waters anymore. One of the things we did is commercialize the water in Lake Victoria. It doesn't belong to Ugandans anymore. It belongs to some small people there. And they are not small, but small people, about 10 or 11 people there, who own Lake Victoria. When you start planting oil palm on Lake Victoria, it means when you get to Kalangala, the buffer zone. Now, a buffer zone is basically the area between the plantation and the water. And there's a specific distance that you need to keep. The buffer zone doesn't exist anymore because the oil palm plants are now in the lake. But remember, these plants they are sprayed and they have chemicals around them. Fish produce and procreate on the riverbanks. I mean, on the lake and riverbanks. They can now not go and lay their eggs because the chemicals are killing the eggs, and they're in tandem killing the older fish that we see. So for you to be able to get fish in Lake Victoria, you have to ride a little bit further into the lake. And that is not possible for an ordinary fisherman. It needs trawlers, which are much bigger. And that has been commercialized to different people now. And we are sending all that fish to Europe. So that's why fish is expensive in Uganda, because ordinary folk cannot even access it. That's what even the people in Kalanga tell you, they cannot access any more fish. And also, when a palm, because palm, the variety that is in Uganda, we don't eat palm traditionally like the West Africans or what, but we have about 6,000 acres that have been promised to the oil palm companies. But when oil palm is growing, the plant needs a lot of space. There is a farming system that is used to plant oil palm. As you start planting your oil palm, within the 25 years that the plant expires, because the plant takes about 25 years to expire, it grows and starts intertwining its roots within itself, something along those lines. So one plant grows into the other and the roots mix with each other. You cannot plant anything else on that garden. But even after the 25 years, if you choose to remove the palm, you have to rehabilitate that soil for some time to be able to start planting food again. Same happens with sugarcane, same happens with pine, same happens with all the different things. So there's something fundamentally wrong, and we need to have a conversation about the free entry and exit of chemicals, the so-called investors who are coming into the country to, I don't know, plant, I don't know what for us. We need to be able to have a very honest conversation. We need to be very angry enough to say enough is enough, because our food systems are being affected. And I think the buck stops with someone. I don't know who, but it does.
This conversation is so eye-opening, and I feel 1 hour is not enough to do justice to it. And yet our time is running pretty fast. Anyway, we have 2 minutes. Looking at what Susan just shared, what is the way out of this, practically, as we conclude?
I think Susan has just hinted on it, because she says the buck stops with someone. The truth is the buck stops with the Genome 7. And he's the one man who has been trading the notions of leave my Chinese alone. The Chinese that have depleted the sand from Lake Victoria, and even when the fish were to lay eggs and procreate, the sand in which this has to be done is not there. It's been taken to China. So I think it's important now to reconsider putting national interests first, okay, before they being interested in ensuring that the regime survives. And therefore, that might not happen, though, until you and I, as the voters, get to demand that it happens. Because I think for the longest time we've been sleeping. And so an appeal, as I conclude, an appeal to Ugandans, wherever you are, to do what you can within your means to make sure that you get pressure to bear on the people we have entrusted with authority to manage and govern our land, to make sure that the decisions that are being taken are those that are going to be for posterity. We need to keep Uganda as a good place to be for our children and our children's children. But also to make sure that we keenly look at these politicians who behave in a way and manner that they are serving a different master, and then be able to always track the correlation between their behavior and their campaign financiers. I thank you, Felix. It's been a pleasure discussing this topic. It's a very interesting topic, and I was happy to be a part of it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm calling this part A, or part 1 of this discussion, because I think we need to come back here and look at the magnitude of the path we are taking. Until Ugandans appreciate the path we are taking, then that path where it stops, we'll start to see exactly what you're talking about here. Thank you so much, Susan, for being part of this discussion. I was with Susan Nakachwa, who is the current program. She has the program for grain in Africa, and she's a researcher, done a lot of research around this area, very passionate about food in its indigenous ways. So Susan, it's been a pleasure having you here discussing with us. I was also joined by Henry Muguzi, who is a democracy expert, an activist, and equally a researcher. And my name is Felix Kafuma, who was moderating this talk show. Till next time, next week, same time. Bye-bye. Take care of yourselves. Let's get this conversation going. We can't save this country. Thank you so much. God bless you.